Hi again, my dears. Tonight's story follows Mira, a shy restoration intern whose quiet eye for art draws three dangerous rich women into obsession. Between gifts, rivalry, gallery secrets, and aching desire, she learns that being adored is not enough unless she can choose herself first and be free. The second thing I learned was that the Alcott Gallery did not believe in ordinary doors. Then the wind turned my umbrella inside out. "Miss Vale," a voice called from inside the entrance, saving me from whatever my face had been about to do. I turned so quickly that my boot slipped on the wet step. A woman in a charcoal suit stood just beyond the doors with a tablet pressed against her chest. "Mira Vale?" "Yes," I said, far too loudly. "That's me. Sorry. First day. Umbrella betrayal." The suited woman blinked once, as if betrayal by umbrella had not been covered in the internship briefing. "I'm Celine. Follow me." The gallery interior was worse than the entrance, by which I mean it was beautiful enough to make me angry. I had spent years learning how to look at art carefully, how to separate the varnish from the brushwork, the story from the surface, the thing itself from the way money shouted around it. But the Alcott Gallery made that separation difficult. It had skylights like slices of winter sky, pale stone floors that held faint reflections of every painting, and walls spaced so generously that each canvas seemed to have its own climate. The air smelled faintly of beeswax, lilies, and the kind of silence you only get when everyone in a building has agreed that the objects matter more than the people. Celine walked quickly and spoke faster. "You will report to Conservation Room 2 unless told otherwise. Your placement is 6 months. You will handle cataloging, condition reports, climate logs, and basic preparation under supervision. You will not speak to patrons unless spoken to. You will not identify donors unless you already know them, which you probably don't. You will not touch anything without gloves unless instructed. You will not, under any circumstances, offer casual opinions during trustee walkthroughs." "I can be very quiet," I said. "I hope so." Celine gave me a stack of folders, a login I immediately forgot, and a task that sounded simple enough to be a trap. A group of small coastal paintings from the late 19th century needed preliminary catalog entries updated before a donor review. I was to compare existing notes, add visible condition concerns, flag contradictions, and not get creative. "Do not get creative," she repeated, as if my face suggested hidden danger. "I won't." "Good. I have 3 meetings, a courier problem, and a trustee walkthrough at 2. If anyone asks where I am, you have not seen me." It was not Edmund Rail. I tried to ignore this, because ignoring things above my pay grade had kept me alive in several previous jobs. The problem was that the longer I looked, the more irritated I became. The brushwork in the water was too restless. Rail flattened his gray waves in patient horizontal strokes, but these little waves curled upward with bright, nervous flicks of green. The sky had a lavender underpainting that I had seen before in a tiny regional museum when I was 20, standing alone on a Tuesday, eating a granola bar I had smuggled in my sleeve because I was too broke to buy lunch. It looked like Alma Verity, who had painted under initials because galleries liked women better when they were decorative or dead. Possible attribution question. Pigment handling in lower left water passage and lavender ground visible in sky may suggest alternate hand. Compare Verity Coastal Studies, circa 1885 to 1889. Then I sat back and felt physically ill. A voice behind me said, "Why Verity?" I turned so fast I knocked my knee on the table. The woman from the rain stood just inside the conservation room. She had removed her coat. Beneath it, she wore a cream silk blouse and a dark skirt so perfectly cut that it seemed less sewn than negotiated into existence. Celine stood beside her, pale with professional tension. 2 men I did not recognize hovered near the doorway with the strained expressions of people pretending not to listen. My first thought was that I had broken a rule. I stood. My chair clicked backward. "I'm sorry, I was just flagging a possibility. I didn't mean to, make a conclusion." That was not what I asked. Her voice was low, even, and so precise it made the room feel more organized. Why Verity? I swallowed. The water, mostly, and the underpainting. Rail's grays are heavier. He uses the same directionality even when the sea is active, almost like he doesn't trust water to move without discipline. Verity lets it misbehave more. And she liked that lavender ground in coastal skies for a few years before she stopped showing publicly. I could be wrong. Show me, she said. Here, the green curling at the edges of the foam. It looks decorative at first, but it is not. She used it to keep the grays from dying. Rail would have softened that. And here, under the sky, where the varnish has yellowed, you can still see the cooler layer. It is easier to see from an angle. What is your name? She asked, though Celine had already said it. Mira Vale. Mira, she repeated, as if testing the fit of it. She asked me 3 questions after that. Not friendly questions, not unfriendly either. Exact questions. Where had I studied? Why restoration rather than curation? When I noticed a contradiction in a record, did I tend to assume the record was wrong or that I was missing something? I studied at Northbridge and then did a certificate in material conservation, I said. Restoration because I like work that doesn't need me to be seen for the work to matter. And I assume I'm missing something first. Then I try to find out what. Then I panic quietly. Then I write a note with too many qualifiers. The woman's mouth did not smile, but something almost moved there. Reasonable, she said. The walkthrough continued. The woman left with the others, and my body remembered it was allowed to breathe. 10 minutes later, Celine returned alone. That was Seraphine Alcott, she said. As in, the Alcott Gallery, she added, because apparently my horror was not yet complete. I thought the gallery was named after a dead person. It is. Several. She is the current one. I looked at the painting, then at my note, then at the door through which I had just explained brushwork to the primary patron of my internship site, while damp hair stuck to my neck. Am I fired? Celine's expression changed in a way I could not read. No, your workspace is being moved. To where? Conservation Room 1. Celine looked toward the hallway, where someone was already carrying my clicking chair away. Better. I have learned, she said, not to ask that question when Ms. Alcott makes decisions before lunch. That was how my first day ended. Not with disaster, though I waited for it until my bus came, and not with triumph, because I still had to eat instant noodles over my sink in a studio apartment where the radiator groaned like a haunted man. It ended with a better desk, a chair that did not click, and the small Verity painting placed on an easel across from me the next morning, angled perfectly toward the place where I would sit. I told myself wealthy people were eccentric. I told myself patrons moved art around for reasons too rarefied for interns to understand. I told myself many things over the next 2 weeks, and most of them would have been more convincing if Seraphine Alcott had not begun rearranging the weather around me. At first it was the chair, then the lamp, then a magnifier I had mentioned to Celine in passing, not requested, appeared on my table in a velvet-lined box with a note from purchasing claiming it had been recently approved. The staff kitchen began stocking the jasmine tea I liked, but had only brought from home twice. A small vase of white orchids appeared near the window, never in the way, always fresh. When I forgot lunch one Tuesday because I had stayed late the night before cataloging frame damage, a covered tray arrived from the gallery cafe with lentil soup, a pear, and the exact almond biscuit I had stared at that morning, but not bought because it cost $8 and had the audacity to be small. Did everyone get lunch? I asked the other intern, Priya. Priya looked at my tray, then at her own granola bar, then at me with deep professional interest. No. It might be for the room. It has your name on it. A small white card rested beneath the spoon. Mira Vale. No message, no signature. I ate the soup because I was hungry, and because my principals, while sincere, had never successfully survived lentils. But I spent the entire meal feeling watched by the orchids. Seraphine herself appeared rarely, and somehow constantly. I would see her crossing the atrium with donors, one hand folded around the other wrist, face calm as a winter lake. I would look up from a condition report and find her in conversation with Celine near the doorway, not watching me. Except the moment my pencil rolled off the table, she paused mid-sentence and glanced down before I did. Once, during a private preview of Dutch interiors, she stood beside me as I studied a tiny painted window glowing in the back of a room within a room. "What do you see?" she asked. I almost laughed because it was becoming her version of hello. "A woman pretending to sew while listening to people argue in the next room." Seraphine turned her head. "That is not in the catalog." "It wouldn't be. It's just the posture. She's angled away from the cloth. And the dog is alert, but not at her. It feels like something is happening outside the frame." "That does not bother you." "What?" "Not knowing what." I thought about that. "No, it makes me like it more." "Most people want the frame to contain the answer," she said. "Most frames are lying." On the Friday of my second week, an invitation appeared on my desk. Thick cream paper, black ink, my name written by hand. Private preview, Alcott Gallery East Wing, 8 o'clock. Professional development opportunity, Celine said when I asked. "Important to attend," she added without meeting my eyes. The preview was not professional development. It was a date wearing a museum badge. There were other people there, technically. Donors, trustees, a critic with silver glasses, 2 collectors who spoke about sculpture as if discussing hostage negotiations. But from the moment I arrived, Seraphine claimed me with nothing more than attention. She introduced me as Miss Vale, one of our restoration specialists, which was generous enough to make Celine choke softly into her champagne. She asked my opinion in front of people whose shoes probably had trust funds. She guided me from painting to painting, with a hand at my shoulder, her touch light, but never uncertain. Then she leaned close while we stood before a moonlit courtyard by an obscure Venetian painter and said, "You look as though you expect to be asked to leave." I held my glass with both hands. "Old habit." "From where?" "Everywhere nicer than I am." Her gaze moved over my face. I could not tell if she disliked the answer or wanted to put it in a locked drawer. "You are not an intrusion here, Mira." "I spilled coffee on a loan agreement yesterday," I said, because sincerity made me nervous. "Was it an important loan agreement?" "All loan agreements seem important in this building." "Did anyone die?" "Not visibly." "Then I will allow it." I laughed before I could stop myself. The sound came out too soft and too startled. Seraphine watched it happen with a stillness that made my laughter fade into something more delicate. "There," she said. "What?" I wondered what it would take. I did not know then that Seraphine's campaign, which I had considered overwhelming, was the quiet one. Vesper Malone entered my life by preventing me from being crushed by my own portfolio case. It was a Monday morning, because apparently Mondays had decided to become narratively aggressive. I had been sent to the archives in the building adjacent to the gallery, and had returned with a case large enough to contain either rolled canvases or one very patient accomplice. The elevator doors began to close while I was still trying to angle it through. Wait, sorry, I have no spatial reasoning," I said to nobody, which was how I addressed most mechanical objects. A hand shot between the doors. They reopened. The woman inside looked at the case, then at me, then grinned like the day had finally become interesting. "That thing is bigger than you." "I know. I was hoping it would respect me if I seemed confident." "Did it?" "Not even briefly." She stepped out, took one end before I could protest, and helped me maneuver it inside with the easy strength of someone who had opinions about deadlifts. She had short, dark auburn hair pushed back from her face, warm brown skin, sharp cheekbones, and a body that made her tailored navy suit look less like office wear than a dare. There was restless energy in every line of her, as if standing still was a favor she granted buildings. "Which floor?" she asked. "4, please." "Gallery?" "Yes." Intern? I looked down at my badge. Is it that obvious? Only because everyone else in this building looks either rich or dead inside. The laugh burst out of me. I clapped a hand over my mouth, then realized she was laughing too. Vesper Malone, she said, holding out her hand around the portfolio case. Mira Vale. Her handshake was warm, firm, and a little too lingering to be casual. Unlike Seraphine, who made attention feel like a candle being lowered toward paper, Vesper made it feel like someone had opened a window in a room I had not realized was airless. New to Velmore? She asked. 2 weeks. That explains the surviving optimism. I don't know if I would call this optimism. I cried at the grocery store because the apples were organized by region. That's not crying. That's cultural adjustment. The elevator rose. I became deeply aware of her shoulder beside mine, of the faint scent of cedar and citrus, of the fact that she looked directly at me when she spoke, as if nothing else in the elevator was worth even peripheral vision. At 4, the doors opened. She helped me drag the case out. Thanks, I said. Really, I might have had to live in there. Could be worse. Elevator has decent lighting. She pulled a card from inside her jacket and held it out. In case you need help carrying things, or anything. The pause before anything was not subtle. It was not even pretending to be subtle. I stared at the card as if it might detonate. Vesper Malone, founder and CEO, ArcLight Systems, a phone number printed beneath in black. Oh, I said, because women like that handing me numbers was not a scenario for which my nervous system had prepared. Thank you. You're welcome, Mira. She said my name as if we were already in the middle of a conversation we would inevitably continue. Then she stepped back into the elevator, still smiling when the doors closed. I did not text her. Of course I did not text her. I put the card in my desk drawer under a packet of lens wipes and behaved, for the rest of the day, like a normal person who had not been flirted with by a tech founder in an elevator. At 6:17 that evening, my phone buzzed while I was reheating rice in my apartment. Unknown number. Did the case make it upstairs, or should I organize a rescue mission? I stared. Then I stared harder, as if the words might rearrange into something less alarming. Me. How did you get my number? Unknown number, staff directory. Me. That feels illegal. Unknown number, technically rude. Legally ambiguous, emotionally necessary. Me. You pulled a staff directory within hours? Unknown number. I waited 43 minutes. Me. That is worse. Unknown number. I know. Dinner. I should have been frightened. Maybe a healthier person would have been. I was unsettled, definitely. I put the phone face down, paced 3 steps in my kitchen, picked it back up, and stared at the message again. But beneath the alarm was a dangerous little warmth, the kind that came from being pursued with such cheerful certainty that my old instinct to make myself small had nowhere to stand. Me. No dinner. Vesper. Coffee? Me. No. Vesper. Tea. Me. Good night, Vesper. Vesper. Good night, Mira. For the record, I admire your negotiation style. I did not answer. I also did not delete the conversation. The next day, a coffee appeared on my desk. Not from the Gallery Cafe. From a tiny place 3 blocks away that I had mentioned to Priya because their cinnamon latte tasted like someone had invented autumn specifically to comfort anxious women. On the cup, written in black marker, was my name and a small lightning bolt. Priya leaned over. Is that from your patron saint or your elevator wife? I don't have an elevator wife. Interesting that you knew who I meant. I hate this city. No, you don't. I did not. That was the problem. The rivalry ignited at an event for a private collection of modernist sculpture, which meant everyone wore black and pretended to understand welded steel. I was there to assist with condition notes if needed, which mostly meant standing near a wall with a tablet and trying not to eat too many canapes shaped like architectural regret. Seraphine arrived at 8:15 in a black dress with long sleeves and a neckline that made simplicity look indecently powerful. She saw me across the room. I knew the exact moment because the air changed. It was not visible. It was worse. It was social pressure moving like weather. She came toward me, and the crowd unconsciously made room. "Mira," she said. "Ms. Alcott." Her gaze lowered very briefly to my mouth, then returned to my eyes. "Seraphine, when we are not in a staff meeting." My brain dropped everything it was carrying. "Seraphine," I repeated, and watched the almost smile appear. Before either of us could say more, a voice behind me said, "Well, that sounds intimate." Vesper Malone stood there in a deep green suit with no blouse under the jacket, because apparently subtlety had wronged her in a past life. She held 2 glasses of champagne and offered one to me. I took it reflexively, which was my first mistake. Seraphine looked at the glass, then at Vesper. "Ms. Malone." Seraphine. No one needed to tell me they knew each other. The temperature between them had history in it. Vesper smiled. "Didn't know you were giving interns permission to use your first name now. How modern." "Didn't know you were attending arts events for the art." "I go where beauty is." I considered stepping backward, but there was a sculpture behind me, and I refused to be found impaled on modernism. Seraphine's expression did not change. "How indiscriminate of you." Vesper laughed. "Careful! You'll make Mira think you're jealous." Both women looked at me. I lifted the champagne and drank too much at once. Bubbles attacked my nose. "I'm not thinking anything." Vesper leaned closer. "That sounds unlikely." Seraphine said, "Miss Vale is working." "Miss Vale is holding champagne." "Because you handed it to her." "Because she has hands." I stood between them, 1 glass of champagne away from either enlightenment or death, and understood with slow, dawning horror that their existing tension had found a new center. Me, my face, my hands, my stupid, traitorous laugh. I could feel them both directing themselves toward me, not like women politely interested in an intern, but like queens deciding which flag would fly over a newly discovered island. "I need the bathroom," I said. They both moved slightly, as if to guide me. "Alone," I added with the calm of a hostage negotiator. I escaped to the nearest restroom, locked myself in a stall, and stayed there for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because I timed myself after the first 3, thinking I would leave when my pulse stopped behaving like a small trapped bird. At minute 7, Priya texted. "Priya, are you hiding?" Me, strategically pausing. Priya, "The rich ones are circling." Me, "Pull send help." Priya, "No, this is the best night of my life." When I finally returned, Seraphine was speaking to a critic with the lethal grace of a woman correcting him without raising her voice. Vesper stood near the bar, watching the room with one hand in her pocket. They were not looking at each other. They were both looking at me. After that, neutrality became my full-time occupation, and I was terrible at it. If I accepted Seraphine's arranged lunch, Vesper sent dinner. If I wore the soft gray scarf Isolde would later give me, Seraphine noticed before I reached my desk. If I laughed at Vesper's texts, orchids appeared. If I spent too long looking at a handwritten note left near my station, Vesper somehow found a reason to come by with coffee and ask who had such tragic penmanship. I could have stopped answering. I could have drawn a hard line early, maybe. But I had spent my whole life being grateful for scraps of attention and suspicious of full plates. When someone remembered my favorite soup, part of me did not know how to refuse it without insulting the hungry version of myself who had once eaten crackers for dinner in a dorm laundry room. When someone sent a car because it was raining, I knew I should object to the presumption, but I also remembered walking 40 minutes through sleet because the bus route changed and nobody cared whether I got home. Being cared for, even incorrectly, found all the bruised places in me and pressed. Then Isolde Vane arrived, and the room became quiet in an entirely new way. The board meeting took over the gallery on a Thursday. Trustees appeared in tailored coats and soft shoes, speaking in low voices about acquisitions, tax structures, and the moral importance of private collections remaining privately accessible to the sort of people invited to access them. I was asked to bring a set of updated condition packets to the conference room and then remain available near Conservation 1. Isolde was introduced to me in passing, as if anyone could be introduced to Isolde Vane in passing. She was 41, though the number had no useful relationship to her face, which carried both youth and exhaustion in elegant layers. She had silver blonde hair cut just below her jaw, eyes the color of storm clouds over deep water, and long hands that made me think of music before I knew who she was. She wore a charcoal dress and a pale blue coat draped over her shoulders. She looked like a woman painted by someone who loved restraint and then ruined by one hidden grief. Isolde Vane, Celine said. Board member. I offered my hand. Mira Vale, intern. Isolde took my hand and did not shake so much as hold it briefly, as if checking whether I was warm. You are the Verity note. I looked at Celine, who had the decency to pretend paperwork had become urgent. I suppose I am. That was a good note. Thank you. Too many qualifiers. I blinked, her mouth curved slightly. But good. Then the meeting pulled her away. Or should have. An hour later, she appeared near my desk with a folder of acquisition documents. She asked whether the chair beside the window was free. It was clearly not my chair to grant, but when Isolde looked at a chair, the chair seemed to reconsider its loyalties. Of course, I said. She sat. She opened the folder. She did not read it. What made you choose restoration? She asked. I glanced up from a frame report. People keep asking me that like the answer might reveal a crime. Does it? Only against financial stability. That small curve returned. It transformed her face less than it illuminated the sadness already there. I told her the answer I usually gave, then the real one, because she listened as if she could hear the difference. I told her about my grandmother's church in a small inland town, the water-damaged saint in the vestibule, the summer I spent watching a retired conservator coax a face back out of brown varnish with cotton swabs and patience. I told her I liked the humility of it, not making something new, not signing your name, just helping what was already there survive being misunderstood. Isolde's eyes stayed on me the entire time. What did you listen to while you watched? She asked. The question startled me. While she worked. Yes. There was a radio in the corner, mostly old songs, sometimes classical if the signal got weird. I didn't know any of the names. What do you listen to now? When I work, rain sounds. Bad habit. Not music. Music makes me feel too much. I start following it instead of my hands. Something shifted in her expression. I worried I had offended her, though I still did not know she had once been one of the most celebrated concert pianists in Europe before retiring at 36 without explanation. I understand that, she said. The conversation lasted 2 hours. I know because Celine eventually came to the door, looked at Isolde, looked at me, and silently abandoned whatever she had intended to say. Isolde asked about my childhood, but not in the way Seraphine asked questions like a collector identifying provenance. Not in the way Vesper asked as if assembling a map for future ambushes. Isolde asked as if the answers entered her and had to find somewhere to live. When she finally stood, the light outside had gone blue. I kept you from work, she said. I think board members are allowed to do that. That sounds lonely for interns. I've survived worse than conversation. She looked at me for a long moment. Yes, she said softly. I imagine you have. That evening, after I had changed into pajamas and was deciding whether cereal counted as dinner if eaten from a mug, my email chimed. No subject, no message, no signature, only an attached audio file titled Mira. I should have been alarmed. Again, healthier person, better boundaries, all of that. But I clicked. Piano filled my small apartment. It was not a song I knew. It began with a hesitant pattern in the right hand, light but uneven, like footsteps entering an unfamiliar room. Then a lower chord answered, not chasing, not crowding, only making space. The melody moved in small questions. It had rain in it, and marble, and something I recognized with a shock so intimate I had to sit on the edge of my bed. It sounded like being seen before you had decided whether to hide. I listened 3 times. Then I typed a reply. Me, is this yours? No answer came for 7 minutes. Isolde. Yes. Me, it's beautiful. Isolde. It is unfinished. Me, it still counts. Another pause. Isolde. So do you. I closed the laptop and pressed my hand over my face. Absolutely not, I told the empty room again. But I was beginning to suspect the phrase had lost legal force. I tried to be neutral. I truly did. I thanked Seraphine for the catalogs with professional wording. I told Vesper that staff directories were not dating apps. I told Isolde her music was beautiful, but did not ask what it meant. I wore plain sweaters and kept my head down and focused on flaking varnish, lifting overpaint, humidity readings, anything that could not look back at me with expensive eyes. It did not help, because the terrible truth was that I liked them. Not equally, not safely, not in ways I understood. But I liked Seraphine's controlled attention, the way she noticed discomfort before I named it, the way her rare honesty flashed like a blade under silk. I liked Vesper's ridiculous nerve, her restless kindness, the way she made me laugh at the exact moment I was preparing to disappear into myself. I liked Isolde's quiet gravity, the sense that every word between us continued vibrating after the conversation ended. I liked being wanted. There it was. Ugly, tender, human. I liked it. I liked walking into a room and feeling 3 powerful women become aware of me. I liked the lunches, the notes, the glances, the absurdity of it all. I liked not having to prove I existed, and that frightened me more than any of them did. The reading room incident happened on a rainy Wednesday near the end of my 2nd month. The gallery had a private library on the mezzanine, all walnut shelves and green-shaded lamps, where staff could consult reference books if no patrons were using it. I went there after lunch to check a catalog raisonné and made the catastrophic mistake of sitting in a leather chair that understood my deepest need for unconsciousness. I had been working late for a week. A storm pressed against the skylights. The book was warm from the lamp. I remember thinking I would close my eyes for 1 minute because I was an adult, and adults could make reasonable choices. I woke to voices. She is exhausted, Seraphine said. She's adorable, Vesper said. Lower your voice, Isolde murmured. My eyes opened. All 3 women stood in the reading room. Seraphine was near the table, one hand resting on the back of a chair, her face composed except for the line between her brows. Vesper leaned against a shelf with her arms crossed, wearing a leather jacket I had not seen before, and an expression of open fascination. Isolde sat in the chair opposite mine, so still she might have been there for hours. I had a book open on my chest, a crease on my cheek, and, as I would discover later in the mirror, my hair had formed a small, ambitious peak on one side. Please tell me there is a fire, I said hoarsely, and you all came to rescue me for normal reasons. Vesper's grin appeared. I came because Priya said you disappeared, and I have healthy concern. Priya has your number? Priya respects action. Seraphine said, I came because your supervisor said you missed a scheduled review. I sat up, horrified. What time is it? 4:20, Isolde said. I slept for 2 hours? 2 hours and 12 minutes, Seraphine said. Vesper looked at her. Of course you know that. Seraphine did not look away from me. She could have been unwell. I was asleep, I said. People do that. You looked cold. Isolde's voice was soft. Only then did I realize a pale scarf had been draped over my legs. Vesper noticed at the same time. Is that yours? Isolde's hand rested lightly on the arm of her chair. It was near me. Everything is near you if you move quietly enough. Seraphine's gaze lowered to the scarf. Mira, do you need water? I need, I said, with great care, for everyone to stop looking at me like a rare injured squirrel. No one stopped. Vesper pushed away from the shelf. I can drive you home. Seraphine said, My car is already waiting. Isolde said nothing, which somehow made both offers feel louder. I can take the bus. No, all three said. The word landed in the room with such synchronized force that I started laughing. I could not help it. It bubbled up from exhaustion, embarrassment, and the sheer absurdity of being a 24-year-old intern in wrinkled tights, while three women who could each buy a wing of the gallery argued silently over who would escort me 12 blocks. Vesper's face softened first. Seraphine's almost smile appeared before she suppressed it. Isolde looked down, but I saw her mouth curve. Before we return to Mira's story, I just want to share a quick note. This version is written for the main audience, so some of the more heated and uncensored private moments between these women are softened here. The fuller, bolder version of those scenes is available on my Patreon, with every intimate moment left intact. Now let us return to the gallery, where Mira was beginning to understand that being adored by dangerous women was not nearly as simple as every lonely part of her had once imagined. I let Seraphine's car take me home because she solved the argument by saying, Mira will choose. And all three looked at me with expressions so intense, I panicked and chose the first face I saw. This was not a system of governance I recommend. The car was warm and smelled like leather and cedar. Seraphine sat beside me, not across from me, which felt significant in a way I did not have the energy to process. Outside, Velmore blurred under rain. The coastal lights smeared gold on the wet glass. You are overworking, she said. I am working the amount necessary to not look like a charity case. Her head turned. Who made you feel that way? The question was too immediate, too sharp. I looked down at my hands. Life, scholarships, professors who meant well and patrons who didn't. You learn to be twice as useful and half as inconvenient. Seraphine was quiet for several blocks. Then she said, I have made you inconvenient. I gave a tired laugh. That is one word for it. I did not intend harm. I know. Do you? Her voice lowered. I am not accustomed to wanting things gently. The sentence entered the car and sat between us, more honest than either of us had planned. I looked at her then. In the dim light, her control seemed less like arrogance and more like armor fitted so long ago she no longer knew where the buckles were. Maybe start by wanting people gently, I said. Her gaze moved over my face with almost painful attention. I am trying. That should not have affected me as much as it did. At my building, the driver opened the door, but Seraphine stepped out too and walked me beneath the awning. Rain struck the pavement around us. My apartment building was narrow, old, and smelled permanently of damp stone. Beside Seraphine, it seemed embarrassed. Thank you for the ride, I said. Sleep tonight. That sounds like an order. It is a request wearing the wrong clothes. I smiled despite myself. Good night, Seraphine. Her eyes warmed by one impossible degree. Good night, Mira. She did not touch me. Somehow that restraint followed me upstairs more vividly than her hand on my shoulder ever had. The annual gala arrived with the subtlety of an invading army. For 3 weeks, the gallery transformed itself into a place even more expensive than usual. Florists carried in branches of white blossoms tall enough to require ladders. Caterers measured corridors with military seriousness. Security multiplied. Celine developed a twitch under her left eye. Every staff member received an assignment, a schedule, a warning, and the bleak encouragement that if we survived Saturday, there would be leftover dessert in the staff kitchen. I was technically working. This was emphasized to me by Celine, by the badge clipped discreetly inside my black dress, and by my own repeated internal monologue. I was there to assist with condition concerns and donor questions about a set of newly displayed works. I was not there as anyone's guest. I was not there to be collected, displayed, escorted, claimed, or emotionally auctioned between women with terrifying cheekbones. At 6:45, 3 separate escorts arrived in the staff corridor. The first was Seraphine's driver, holding a small black box and wearing the expression of a man trained not to perceive chaos. Ms. Alcott asked that Miss Vale have this before joining her. Inside the box was a pair of pearl earrings, so delicate they looked like captured moonlight. "I am not joining her," I said, though my voice came out weak because the earrings were beautiful in a way that made poverty feel loud. The second escort was Vesper's assistant, a cheerful woman named June, who handed me a garment bag. "Vesper said the shoes you brought will murder you by 9 and she refuses to watch." I never told Vesper what shoes I brought. June's smile did not move. She guessed. Inside the garment bag were flat black velvet shoes in my exact size. The third was a young man from the board office carrying a pale envelope. "Ms. Vane asked me to give you this." It contained one handwritten line. "You do not have to be beautiful for anyone tonight. But you are." I sat down on a storage crate. Celine looked at the earrings, the shoes, the note, then at me. "Mira." "I know. Do you?" "No." Her expression softened with a tiredness that was almost maternal. "You are allowed to say no to all of them. I know that, in theory. You need to know it in shoes." I laughed, then nearly cried, which was inconvenient because my eyeliner was the only part of me cooperating. I wore my own earrings. I wore Vesper's shoes because my original shoes were, in fact, planning homicide. I tucked Isolde's note into the small pocket inside my dress and left Seraphine's pearls in the box, which felt like a declaration, even though I could not yet have said what it declared. The gala filled the gallery with black silk, white flowers, and conversations that floated above the floor without ever touching anything practical. I stood near the East Wing entrance with a tablet, answering questions about a restored landscape while trying to ignore the sensation of being watched from 3 directions. At 7:30, Seraphine found me. "You did not wear the earrings," she said. "No." "Good." That surprised me. "Good?" "If you had worn them because you felt obliged, I would have deserved the insult." I looked at her carefully. "And if I had worn them because I wanted to? Then I would have spent the evening insufferably pleased." I almost smiled. "Thank you for them. They are yours regardless." Seraphine. "I know." She inclined her head slightly. "Too much." Before I could answer, Vesper appeared with 2 glasses of something amber and dangerous. "I see we are exchanging emotionally loaded jewelry in public now." Seraphine's posture cooled. "Vesper." "Mira." Vesper's gaze dropped to my feet and lit. "You wore the shoes." "They were practical. My favorite form of surrender." "It was not surrender." "Fine. Tactical alliance." Seraphine said. "She is working." "She is also standing in the blast radius of your pearls." I made the mistake of glancing toward the central hall and saw Isolde approaching. She wore midnight blue, her silver blonde hair tucked behind one ear, her face calm in a way I had learned meant she was feeling too much to show any of it. Vesper followed my gaze. "Oh, excellent." "The haunted piano has arrived." "Do not call her that," I said automatically. Both Seraphine and Vesper looked at me. Isolde reached us in the corridor just as the silence became unbearable. Her eyes touched my face, then my ears, then my shoes, then Seraphine, then Vesper. She missed nothing. She never missed anything. "Mira," she said. "Are you all right?" "No," I said. but in a very elegant way. The corner of her mouth softened. A donor approached Seraphine with a question. Someone called Vesper's name from the stairs. Isolde was asked by a board member whether she would consider playing later in the evening. For one fragile second, I thought the universe might disperse them. Then Seraphine said, "Mira is with me for the first viewing." Vesper said, "Actually, Mira is on my guest confirmation for the rooftop reception." Isolde looked between them and said quietly, "Her name is also beside mine for the board table." I turned slowly. "What?" All three paused. "What do you mean my name is beside yours?" Vesper rubbed the back of her neck. In my defense, I thought companion was a flexible category. Seraphine said, "It is customary for patrons to invite professional guests." "Professional guests do not sit beside you at dinner," Isolde said, with a calm that cut cleaner than anger. Seraphine's eyes sharpened. "And board companions do?" Vesper lifted both hands. "Before we all pretend this is about dinner seating, can we acknowledge that none of us wants to share?" A couple passing through the corridor slowed dramatically. Celine appeared at the far end, saw us, and turned around as if she had remembered a fire elsewhere. I stood in the middle of the most expensive argument I had ever witnessed while wearing borrowed velvet flats and holding a tablet full of humidity readings. The absurdity should have been funny. It had been funny once. But in that corridor, under the weight of their attention and the pressure of their wanting, something in me went very still. They were arguing about me, but not to me. Again. Seraphine said, "This is neither the time nor the place." Vesper said, "Of course you think that. You own the place." Isolde said, "Both of you are making her smaller." That silenced them. I looked at Isolde. She looked back, and in her face I saw not possession, not competition, but grief at having participated in something she recognized too late. My hand tightened around the tablet. "I'm going back to work," I said. Vesper blinked. "Mira." "No." My voice was calm because I had passed through panic into a country beyond it. "I am here to work, not to be collected from the staff area like a coat, not to be assigned to a table by 3 people who did not ask me, not to stand in a hallway while you argue about who gets to have me. I am going back to work." No one moved, so I did. I walked through the corridor, past the flowers, past the donors, past Celine, who looked at me with something like pride and terror combined, and into the East Wing. My hands shook only after I reached the landscape display. I set the tablet down, pressed my palms against the cool edge of the plinth, and breathed until the room stopped tilting. None of them followed immediately. But for the rest of the gala, I felt them watching the door I had disappeared through. The next morning, the gallery gave me an unexpected day off. Celine phrased it as recovery time after excellent work. Her eyes phrased it as, "Please leave before the aristocratic weather system returns." I went to a museum. Not the Alcott, a public museum on the older side of Velmore, built of red stone and stubborn civic pride. The floors creaked. The labels were slightly crooked. A school group moved through the ancient ceramics wing in a bright, whispering cluster. No one knew my name. No one had arranged the lighting around my preferences. No one sent food, notes, cars, music, or emotionally significant footwear. I wandered until my chest loosened. In a small upstairs gallery, I found a painting of a woman seated beside an open window, her face turned away from the viewer toward a strip of gray sea. It was not famous. It was not even especially well preserved. The varnish had darkened, and an old repair showed along the lower edge. But something about the angle of her hand on the windowsill made me stop. "She is waiting," a voice said behind me. I closed my eyes. "If you say you had the museum staff directory pulled, I will scream." Isolde's quiet laugh moved through the room. "I did not know you would be here." I turned. She stood a few feet away in a soft black sweater and trousers. No coat despite the weather, her hair loose around her face. Without the gallery around her, without Seraphine and Vesper drawing lines of force across the air, she looked less like an apparition and more like a woman who had slept badly and come to see paintings because she did not know where else to put herself. "I don't know if I believe you," I said. "I know. That doesn't help." "No." We stood there with the painting between us, not quite facing each other. "I come here sometimes," Isolde said, "when the Alcott feels too polished." "Can board members say that?" "Only in rooms without donors." I almost smiled. She did not step closer. That mattered. "I am sorry for last night." "Which part?" "All of it. My part most." "You were the least loud?" "That is not the same as innocent." I looked back at the painting. The woman by the window kept waiting for something outside the frame. I wondered if she was patient or trapped. "No," I said. "It isn't." Isolde received that without flinching. It made me trust her more than an apology would have. We walked through the museum together. At first, I expected the old intensity to return, the feeling of being studied under a lamp. It did not. Isolde stayed beside me, sometimes silent for entire rooms. When she spoke, it was about the work, or about the building, or about the way public museums displayed damage more honestly because they could not afford to hide every scar. I told her that was a generous interpretation of underfunding. She said generosity and underfunding were often forced to know each other. In the sculpture court, rain tapped against the glass roof. A marble girl with a broken hand stood beneath a fern. Isolde stopped before her. "I spent 20 years loving things from a distance," she said. The words were so quiet I almost thought they belonged to the rain. I waited. "Piano made that seem noble. Discipline. Devotion. You sit alone in a room for 8 hours, then alone on a stage, and people call it passion because they do not have to see what it costs." I loved composers who were dead, audiences who vanished, critics who listened for failure, women I never touched because wanting them felt like interrupting the music. She looked at the broken marble hand. I became very good at longing without reaching. Something ached in my throat. And now? Now I reach badly. The honesty of that undid me more than any note she had left. "That sounds lonely," I said. Isolde looked at me. Not like no one had ever pitied her. I am sure many people had, in distant, useless ways. She looked at me like no one had ever named the room she had been living in. "Yes," she said. "It was." We sat in the museum cafe afterward, with tea that tasted faintly of paper cups. Isolde held hers in both hands, long fingers curved around warmth. "Do you actually like me?" I asked. "Or do I represent something?" Her eyes lifted. The question had come out harsher than I meant, but I did not take it back. I needed to hear the answer. "Both," she said. I breathed out a bitter little laugh. "At least you're honest." "You represent interruption," she continued. "Return. A door opening in a house I thought had no doors left. But I like you beyond what you represent. I like that you apologize to furniture when you bump into it. I like that you become angry on behalf of misattributed women. I like that you look at damaged things without greed. I like that you are kinder than you think and more perceptive than is convenient for anyone trying to impress you." My face warmed. "That's a lot." "I have edited the list." A laugh escaped me, soft and startled. She smiled then, not her small gallery smile, but something tired and real. "I don't want to be owned," I said. "I know." "Do you?" "Because sometimes when you look at me, I feel like a song you want to keep playing forever." Pain crossed her face, there and gone. "That is fair." "I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I." "You're older and rich. You're supposed to know." "Money mostly teaches people to confuse desire with permission." I stared at her. She looked down at her tea. "I am trying to unlearn quickly." That was the day something changed. Not resolved, not even softened exactly, but shifted onto a truer axis. Desire without performance was quieter. It left room for me to hear myself. 2 days later, I requested a meeting with Seraphine Alcott. Celine looked at me as if I had announced plans to challenge the ocean to hand-to-hand combat. A meeting? Yes. With Ms. Alcott? Yes. Requested by you. That is how requests work. Celine pressed her fingers to her temple. I will ask. Seraphine responded within 9 minutes. Of course she did. Her private office occupied the top floor of the gallery, behind doors I had never passed. It was not as ornate as I expected. Pale walls, dark shelves, a long desk with nothing unnecessary on it, and one wall of windows overlooking the city and the gray-green sea beyond. There were orchids there too, but rarer ones, their petals spotted like secrets. Seraphine stood when I entered. Mira. Thank you for seeing me. You asked? I know, but people ask you things all the time, and I suspect the city rearranges itself depending on your mood. Only on weekdays. I looked at her. She looked back. The almost smile appeared, faint and dangerous. Then I remembered why I was there. I need to say this before I lose my nerve. Her expression changed. She moved from behind the desk and gestured toward the seating area, but I stayed standing. If I sat on her expensive sofa, I might become diplomatic. I could not afford diplomacy. The competition between you and Vesper and Isolde is making me feel like an object, I said. My voice shook once, then steadied. Not always, not every moment. There are times when I feel cared for. There are things you've done that helped me. But then it becomes gifts I didn't ask for, schedules changed without asking me, invitations made around me, choices presented after you've already decided the shape of them. And I start feeling less like a person you like, and more like something you found and want to keep. Seraphine did not interrupt. Her stillness, which had once thrilled me, now frightened me less because I could see the effort inside it. I won't be collected, I said. Not by you, not by anyone. I spent too much of my life feeling invisible to let being visible turn into a prettier cage. The silence afterward was long enough for me to hear the faint hum of the climate system. Then Seraphine said, "You're right." I had prepared for denial, for elegant deflection, for aristocratic offense. I had not prepared for surrender. She looked toward the window, jaw tight. I've been treating this like an acquisition. The word struck because I had used it in my head, but never aloud. A long pause. I don't know how to do it differently, she said. There it was. The most honest thing Seraphine Alcott had ever said to me, perhaps to anyone. It was not an excuse. She did not soften it into tragedy. She simply placed the truth on the table between us, unframed and difficult. My anger did not vanish. It changed shape. Learn, I said. She looked at me then. Something vulnerable moved beneath her control, so brief I would have missed it 2 months earlier. Will you allow me the chance? I don't know. She nodded once, as if the answer cost her, but she respected its price. That is fair. No more gifts without asking. Yes. No schedule changes. Yes. No calling me your guest unless I agreed to be your guest. A faint wince. Yes. And no punishing the others by using me as the battlefield. Her mouth tightened. Vesper makes that difficult. Vesper is not in this room. Seraphine's gaze sharpened, then lowered. No, she is not. I exhaled. I do like you, Seraphine. That's part of why this is hard. Her composure faltered. Just slightly. Enough. You do? The question was so quiet that my chest hurt. Yes. When you're not trying to own the air, I breathe. The almost smile returned, and this time it was sad. A narrow path. Manageable for a woman with your resources. That earned me a real smile. Small, but complete. It changed her face so drastically that I forgot for 1 second every sensible thing I had ever learned. I will try, she said. I need more than try eventually. I know. When I left her office, I felt as if I had survived a storm by telling it where my roof leaked. Vesper was harder in the way fireworks were harder than ice. I met her on the rooftop garden of her penthouse building because she insisted the public deserved to be spared her emotional range. The penthouse was only 3 floors above the gallery's VIP lounge because rich people apparently preferred their ecosystems stacked vertically. The rooftop had olive trees in enormous planters, low glass walls, and a view of the sea throwing itself against the dark rocks below. Vesper arrived 10 minutes late, breathless, in workout clothes under a camel coat. Sorry, she said. I was in a call with Singapore, then yelled at a man named Todd, then realized I was using Todd to avoid this conversation. Poor Todd. Todd deserved some of it. We stood beside the glass wall. Wind lifted my hair across my mouth. Vesper reached to move it, then stopped herself with visible effort. Good, I thought. Progress. Irritatingly attractive progress. Okay, she said. Hit me. I'm not going to hit you. Verbally, emotionally, with your devastating little face. Vesper. Sorry, deflecting. Continue. I told her what I had told Seraphine, though with more interruptions because Vesper reacted to every sentence like a courtroom drama in which she was both accused and counsel. I didn't mean to make you feel like a thing, she said. But you did. I know, but I was trying to make you feel wanted. You can want someone without investigating their lunch preferences like a hostile merger. She opened her mouth, closed it, then pointed at me. That is a good line, and I hate that it applies. You got my number from a staff directory. Yes. Vesper. It was extremely not my best moment. You texted me like it was charming. I thought it was charming adjacent. It was alarming adjacent. She groaned and dragged both hands through her hair. The wind immediately ruined it further. I know. I get excited and I move. That's my thing. I see something I want and I go. Company, building, person, life. If I pause, someone else gets there first. I'm not market share. The words cut through her motion. Vesper went still. No, she said. You're not. For the first time since I had met her, she looked uncertain, without turning it into a joke. Do you actually like any of us? She asked. Or just the attention? The question landed harder than I expected because it had teeth in both directions. I looked out at the sea. The water below was dark and restless, striking rock, pulling back, striking again. I thought about every lunch, every note, every gift, every glance that had made me feel chosen and cornered at once. I thought about my own hunger, which was not their fault, but had made me easier to overwhelm. I actually like all 3 of you, I said. Which is the problem? Vesper stared. Then, unexpectedly, her eyes shone. Oh, she said. It was such a small sound from such a large force of a woman that I almost reached for her. I did not. But liking you doesn't mean I consent to being chased until I trip, I said. A wet laugh left her. That is also a good line. I'm serious. I know. She turned, leaning back against the glass wall, looking suddenly younger than 35. I don't know how to do slow, but I can learn. Probably. With coaching. Maybe a manual. No more staff directory. No more staff directory. No more unsolicited lunch. What about solicited lunch? If I solicit lunch, you may lunch. She nodded solemnly. Erotic bureaucracy. Understood. I tried not to laugh, and failed. Vesper's face lit as if the laugh had been a prize she had not expected to win. Also, I added, you cannot keep provoking Seraphine just because it makes her look like a glacier having a bad day. But she's so good at it. Vesper, Fine, minimal glacier baiting. None. Reduced to ceremonial occasions? I gave her a look. None, she said, but she was smiling. Before I left, she walked me to the elevator. She did not touch me until the doors opened and then only held out her hand. Palm up, not taking, only offering. I looked at it for a long moment before placing my hand in hers. Her fingers closed gently. There, she said softly. I can ask. I squeezed once and let go. Keep practicing. Isolde did not need a confrontation in the same way, which did not mean she needed none. I went to her piano studio on a Sunday afternoon. It was in an old townhouse near the water, the kind with tall windows and ivy climbing the brick as if trying to remember summer. The room itself was spare and beautiful. A grand piano occupied the center. Shelves of scores lined one wall. There were no portraits, no awards, no photographs of her younger self accepting applause. Only music, light, and a vase of wilting blue flowers on the windowsill. She made tea. Neither of us drank it. I spoke to Seraphine and Vesper, I said. I know. Of course you know. Celine told me Seraphine looked as though someone had moved all the walls in her office. Vesper sent me a message consisting only of the words, I am being mature against my will. I laughed. That sounds right. Isolde sat beside the piano, not at the bench, but in a low chair angled toward me. And me? I touched the edge of the teacup. You make me feel seen, more than anyone has in a long time, maybe ever. But sometimes I don't know if you're seeing me or composing me. Her face tightened with pain, but she nodded. I don't want to become material, I said. No. I don't want every small thing I say turned into an altar. Her eyes closed briefly. I am sorry, she whispered. I know you are. I don't know where devotion ends and hunger begins. She opened her eyes. That is not your burden, but it is true. I looked at her hands, resting motionless in her lap. Hands that had filled concert halls, hands that had written my name into music before she knew whether I wanted to hear it. You can want me, I said, but you have to let me remain unfinished. Isolde's breath caught. I don't know who I am in this city yet, I continued. I don't know what I want from the gallery, from you, from myself. And when all three of you act like you've already decided I'm precious, I feel like I have to become whatever version of me made you look. The version that made me look was you telling a board member that a frame could lie. That is a very specific seduction technique. It was devastating. I smiled, then grew serious again. I need room. I can give you room. Can you? She looked around the studio as if the answer might be written in the empty spaces where applause used to hang. I have lived in rooms all my life. I can learn to make one for someone else. That was the moment I realized I was already in danger with her. Not because she was obsessive, though she was. Not because she could make my name sound like music, though she could. Because she was willing to be clumsy in front of me. Seraphine offered control, surrendered by inches. Vesper offered energy reined in with both hands. Isolde offered uncertainty without decoration. I wanted to touch her. The desire was so clear it frightened me. She saw it. Of course she did, but she did not move. I crossed the room, slowly enough to give myself time to change my mind. I sat beside her on the piano bench. The polished black surface reflected our hands, not touching. Play something, I said. What? Not me. Her eyes flicked to mine. Play something that isn't about me, I said. For a second, I thought she might cry. Then she turned to the keys and played Bach. It was precise at first, almost severe. Then something in her loosened. The notes filled the room in clean, interlocking lines, asking nothing from me. I sat beside her and listened, not as subject, not as muse, but as a woman in a room with another woman who had loved from a distance and was learning the terror of nearness. Seraphine asked before sending things. The first time, a text arrived at 9 in the morning. Me. Yes. She still watched me with frightening precision, but she began to speak her noticing instead of quietly rearranging my life around it. You are cold. Would you like the heat adjusted? Instead of a space heater appearing under my desk like a benevolent ghost. I would like you to attend this preview with me. You may decline. The words sounded unnatural in her mouth at first, as if consent were a language she had learned from a stern tutor. But she said them. This painting made me think. I would like to tell you why, if you want. And in that breathing space, my feelings clarified. They did not simplify. I still felt a pull toward Seraphine when she stood beside me before a painting and asked my opinion with genuine respect. I still felt warmth when Vesper made me laugh so hard on a bad day that I forgot to perform competence. I still felt the old hunger stir when either of them looked at me like I was a miracle they were trying not to mishandle. But with Isolde, I felt something else. Not less intense, deeper, quieter. The feeling did not ask me to shine brighter, laugh louder, surrender faster, become proof of anyone's power or healing. It asked me to stay. The 6-month internship moved toward its end with cruel speed. Winter loosened into a damp Velmore spring. The Verity painting, once misattributed and ignored, became the center of a small internal research project, after my initial note was supported by pigment analysis and a letter found in an archive upstate. Celine told me I had done well in the tone of a woman reporting a manageable fire. Priya cried on my second-to-last Friday and blamed allergies. Vesper sent a cake shaped like a varnish swab, which was so ugly and specific that even Celine took a photograph. Seraphine did not send anything. She asked me to come to her office. The permanent position was offered on thick paper with formal language, and a salary that made me sit very still. I didn't say it was. That surprised me. You did? I want it, I said. Then accept it. I almost smiled. You have gotten better at that. When I stood to leave, she said, Mira, I am proud of you. Thank you, I said. A week later, Vesper took me walking along the harbor, having asked 3 days in advance and accepted my first refusal because I had laundry, which she called a devastating but respectable rival. We bought coffee from a cart and sat on a low stone wall watching gulls conduct organized crime over a dropped sandwich. Assistant conservator. Better. Yes. You do love making growth sound like a sport. I laughed. Then we sat quietly. Vesper could do quiet now, in short intervals. It looked good on her, like a jacket she was still breaking in. Her eyes stayed on the water. I had a whole speech prepared, where I pretended not to know, but I'm trying this maturity thing, and apparently it includes not lying to women with soft eyes. My chest ached. I don't want to lose you, I said. Vesper. That seems fair. We leaned against each other for a moment. 2 women warmed by coffee and an affection that did not get to become everything, but still mattered. That was a lesson, too. Not every desire became a destination. Some became a harbor you could wave from without docking. She invited me to the orchid room at her private residence, a glass conservatory overlooking the cliffs north of the city. I hesitated before accepting, but I trusted the invitation because it came with 3 lines. You may say no. This is personal, not professional. I will send a car only if you request it. Her house was not a house. It was an argument for inheritance. But the orchid room was quieter than I expected, humid and green, filled with rare blooms suspended from branches and arranged along stone shelves. Seraphine wore a pale linen shirt and dark trousers, her hair loose for the first time since I had known her. It made her look less untouchable and somehow more dangerous. Where is it going? Orchids have tour schedules. I walked among them carefully. Some were delicate white, some deep purple, some speckled like wild things pretending to be jewels. Seraphine watched me look. Not hungrily, not like the old days. There was still desire in her, unmistakable, but she held it as one holds a flame near paper after learning paper burns. She looked at the orchids. Yes, that isn't the same as owning them. We stood before a pale green orchid with a throat of dark red. Outside, the sea moved under a pearl sky. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes, I said. I'm sorry. Don't be. I would have known what to do with triumph. I suspect loss will improve me more. It is. I stepped closer, not touching. You matter to me. It is not small. Then, because Seraphine Alcott was still Seraphine Alcott, she reached to a nearby shelf and lifted a small potted orchid, its flowers a tender, improbable yellow. She stared back. I accept the professional challenge, I said. Isolde played for me on the last evening of my internship. You look nervous, I said. I am. Good. I like evidence that you're mortal. Thank you. Before she played, she looked at me. I love you, she said. My breath stopped. I stood. I love you too, I said. For 1 second, she looked lost. Mira, she whispered. I touched her cheek. The first kiss was gentle because we were both frightened of how ungentle our feelings could become. Her mouth was warm and still for one breath, then softer, answering. I felt her restraint tremble under my hand. I had been looked at by her for months, composed by her, written toward by her, but kissing her was different. Kissing her returned me to my body, to my own wanting, to the fact that I could choose contact, deepen it, end it, begin again. Was that okay? She asked. Good. This time she smiled before she did. We did not become simple after that. No real beginning is simple. Mine involved a permanent job in a gallery where my girlfriend sat on the board, which required paperwork, boundaries, and Celine developing a new eye twitch. It involved Vesper deciding that if she could not date me, she would become aggressively supportive, which meant she sent Isolde an article titled Emotional Availability for Former Prodigies, and then denied it for a week. It involved Seraphine inviting both of us to a preview and asking, with impeccable composure, whether Isolde was treating me well, while Isolde replied, I am trying, and Seraphine said, good, with the lethal softness of a woman who meant, continue. I did not stop being hungry for attention either. I had wanted a magical cure for that, some final proof of self-worth that would make old loneliness vanish. Instead, I learned to feed that hunger with steadier things. Work done well, rent paid on time, Priya's laughter in the staff kitchen, Vesper's ridiculous messages, Seraphine's careful respect. Isolde's hand finding mine under a cafe table and waiting for my fingers to close first. The first thing I noticed, I began, was that the water was allowed to misbehave. For a long time, this work lived under the wrong name, I continued. That happens more often than we like to admit. To paintings, to artists, sometimes to people. A frame can tell us where to look, but it can also teach us not to question what we are seeing. Conservation asks us to look again, carefully, humbly, to notice what has been overlooked, and to understand that correction is not damage to the story. Sometimes it is the first truthful version of it. I did not look at Isolde when I said that. If I had, I would have lost the rest of the sentence. Beautifully done, she said. Thank you. I smiled. No. Vesper, passing behind her with a plate of canapes, said, Growth looks stunning on you, Alcott. Vesper winked at me and disappeared into the crowd. Isolde and I stood before the painting. Her shoulder brushed mine. You were extraordinary. I know. Only to someone who loves you. Isolde's hand moved beside mine, not taking. Waiting. That night, after the guests thinned and the gallery quieted, Isolde and I slipped into the reading room, where I had once woken to find all three of them watching over me like rival spirits summoned by exhaustion. The green lamps glowed. Rain began again, softer now, tracing the skylight. I sat in the leather chair and laughed when she looked at me. This chair caused a lot of trouble. I have never trusted it. I held out my hand. She came to me, not with the haunted certainty of the woman who had first sat near my desk and turned conversation into a composition, but with the careful warmth of the woman who had learned to ask. She knelt beside the chair, still elegant, still ridiculous, and rested her chin lightly on my knee. The gesture was playful, unguarded, and so unexpectedly sweet that my chest hurt. Seraphine would pretend not to understand and then understand too much. There was heat in it, yes. There was always heat with Isolde, banked under restraint, waiting for breath and permission. But there was peace too. The kind I had not known how to want. The kind that made no announcement. It simply entered the room, sat down beside me, and stayed. A question with a door inside it. I leaned down and kissed her, slow enough to answer properly. Yes. We left the gallery by the side entrance, laughing under one small umbrella because neither of us had learned from my first day in Velmore. The rain caught in her hair and on my eyelashes. The city shone around us, all wet stone and gold reflections, still expensive, still strange, but no longer designed to exclude me. Isolde held the umbrella badly. I told her so. She said pianists were not trained for weather. I said restoration interns were, apparently, and took over. Halfway down the steps, I looked back at the gallery. The marble entrance glowed under the lamps. Behind those doors were paintings with hidden histories, rooms where I had been overwhelmed, desired, frightened, adored, and finally heard. Somewhere inside, the Verity Sea misbehaved quietly beneath its corrected name. Isolde squeezed my hand. Ready? She asked. I thought of the girl who had arrived with one suitcase and a broken umbrella, trying to look like she belonged in a world that measured belonging in marble and money. I wished I could tell her that she would not belong because someone powerful chose her, or because 3 women wanted her, or because a job title finally made her legitimate. She would belong because she would stop asking the room for permission to exist. Yes, I said. And this time, when I stepped into the rain, I did not feel like I was leaving shelter. I felt like I was walking toward home,